Alright folks, this is our first episode with Skul, so we're going to walk you through a little bit of the gameplay here. You're going to see it pretty high level, not in my play, but high level upgrades and things like that, because I've been playing this for about 40 hours or so. We'll do a run or two. This is not meant to be any kind of guide, but I'll try to explain things as I go. You'll see I have quite a few things unlocked here. All these NPCs are not there when you start the game. So this is a rogue-lite. I think I've got that right. So there are persistent things that you can upgrade over time that'll help the runs become easier, a lot like Hades. But we're going to go ahead and start a run here, and I'll kind of walk you through it. This guy, he helps you upgrade the castle, make it look a little bit nicer, so it's a little bit cleaner than normal. If you bring in enough gold. All of these are NPCs besides the witch. These are NPCs that you're going to find out in the world that come back to your castle later, so spoiler alert. And most of them do make the runs a little bit easier. So as you can see with the witch here, she's got your persistent stat upgrades here. I won't go through them all, but I've got the first two rows completely bought out, second or third row as well, it looks like. So I'm just looking at these last two here. And then Foxboy, I don't think those swords are in his back. I think those are his swords. He will always start you with a skull. I believe it can only be rare, but there are some rares that start with 2 abilities, so that's nice. We don't love the skeleton shield, and the shield bash is a counter, which I don't really love, so we're just going to go ahead and destroy the skull. Destroying a skull gives you skull fragments, which lets you upgrade skulls that you do like later on. This is Ogre Peddler. He's going to start you off with an item. Generally not great, but I think they can be legendary. Attack speed and movement speed. Pick it up. So you always start with Skul. Skul's the character you play as. He has 2 abilities. He does not have a like base passive to his kit, but every skull in the game has something that happens when they swap. So he has Pass the Baton, and then 1 or 2 abilities. Usually when they start at common, they only have 1 ability, but Skul gets 2 because he's the main character. And then our item here, every item has its base effect, which in this case is attack speed and movement speed. And then they always come with 2 passives that stack over time. So you see I have 1 out of 6 of sprint and soar. So you can max those out if you have other items that have those same passives. And I believe those are static. So Ring of Wind will always have sprint and soar. You noticed earlier I could destroy the item instead of picking it up. I can still destroy it in my inventory for a little bit of gold. And then this boy here, my boy Malfurion, he's going to give us a stat increase or a passive bonus, but it is on a timer, so it usually lasts around until the first boss, so temporarily increases magic and physical. But down there at the bottom you can see the timer already starting, that orange icon, and those are all of our passives at the bottom. This guy is just an NPC. So there are doorways at the end of each stage. You get to choose which way you go. These will typically, the gold ones obviously will typically have money. I don't know what's up with the plain ones. I don't know why you would ever take the plain doorway over like a gold one or a skull one, but that's what it is. And down by our mini map there, you'll see we have 3 forms of currency. Skull fragments, we have 5 of those from destroying that shield skull earlier. Those will be used to upgrade skulls that we find later. Gold, which we don't have any because we haven't started. And then that purple stuff is dark quartz. That allows us to upgrade our persistent stuff over time. So I've got 2,800, which isn't enough to upgrade anything for me right now. I'm looking for about 6,000. So as you can see, the pixel art is phenomenal. This game has been in early access for a while, so this isn't new to a lot of people, but it's still a beautiful game. Skul can throw his skull and then teleport to it, which picks it up. If he picks up his skull, it resets his left trigger, which is throwing the skull. And it does do magic damage. If you've ever played League of Legends or any game that has 2 types of damage, physical and magical, this game is the same. Your basic attack on a lot of characters is physical, though it can be magical on some caster characters, and then your abilities just vary. So you can see when he throws a skull, it's magic, but his auto attack and his spin the baton, or pass the baton rather, is physical. So when we get items that increase physical damage, it's going to do our auto attacks for skull, but not the skull throw. So blue chest is like a rarer item. So yep, rare hunter's boots. So that increases sprint and chase, so now we have sprint up to 2 if we take that. You pretty much always are going to take the items early on, because you can break them down at any time at a vendor to get gold, so there's really no reason to not take them until you need to buy something else. And this is just when dashing. you get the chance to drop or not a chance, it's guaranteed, arrow. You can see falling on these skeleton dummies here. One really cool thing is that these dummies appear at the end of every stage, so if you want to see how a new skull works or just want to try something out, they do have dummies here that you can kill and will respawn. So green doors will always give you a skull of varying rarities. A skull is a, quote-unquote character. You can have 2 at a time, so right now we can't swap because we don't have a second skull. And then this, I think, is just gold or items. Obviously, in this door, it was a gold door and it gave us an item, so it's not always money, but generally is. And then this is a healing orb, which isn't going to heal us because we have max health, but it gives you 10 health. Those healing orbs become quite important later on because there really aren't a whole lot of ways to heal your character throughout the game outside of vendors and those healing orbs. And they're dropping a lot more than they usually do right now. Like, I don't usually see this much early on, but it's probably just dropping like that because I don't need them, so it's like, hey, here's all the orbs. So you notice I can interrupt these guys' attacks as they're doing it, but only with some enemies, only with some attacks. So we love Petty Thief. Petty Thief is really good, but he's a speed skull. So notice that skull, base skull here has 2 dashes. It's because he's a balanced skull. You see it to the right of his name. Thief skull is a speed skull, so he also gets 2 dashes, but his are more substantial for sure. And then his passive lets us get money as we attack. I'm not going to go through every skull's ability, but basically he's a great early game skull. He's fast, easy to dodge with, and most importantly, you're going to start off with a lot more money for the first few shots, which is very important when you're looking for money or looking for items. So this is a shrine. It'll buff enemies until you destroy it, in which case you basically steal the buff for yourself. This one is just going to give us more damage in the form of more physical and magic attack, which means we're going to do lots of damage. And we're not going to use the Petty Thief's ability because it throws gold, and you lose that gold when you throw it, and I don't want to use that gold because we need it. We don't really need the ability to kill things. So like with any rogue-lite, whatever, it's going to be all about learning these patterns for these enemies, knowing what can and cannot work. So this is just gold, just money, but helpful. You pretty much always are going to go skull door if you have the option, so you can get more fragments over time and upgrade your skull. Always want to be doing more damage, get more abilities. Alright, so here is one little gripe I have with the game, is that I said you can interrupt enemy attacks, but that big guy you cannot. Now on some enemies, they'll have a yellow glow around them, basically telling you that they're performing an uninterruptible attack. This guy does not. They just don't tell you that you can't interrupt them, but you definitely cannot. Just a lack of consistency with the broadcast of their ability. I mean, you know what they do if you fought them a few times, but for a new player, seeing that yellow glow telling you that it's an attack that won't be interruptible is really helpful for new players, and it's unfortunate that those enemies don't have them, or some enemies don't. So this is a rare skull. Common and rare skulls always start with one ability, unless it's a type of skull that has an ability built in, baked in. So some skulls, like Rider, will always have a certain ability plus, the rollable ability. Genie's good. He's a power skull. He hits pretty hard. He has an invuln, but we're not going to go with him right now. We're going to work with our thief for a little bit. So here's the vendor. You just spend the gold that you've gotten. These are always passive items down here, so you can look and see which one you want to buy. There's always a skull here, so you can swap out whatever skull you want. We'll go ahead and take the frost skull just for the sake of having more stuff to use. And then the food here, it's a self-heal. You do have to pay for it. Notice that this one comes with 40% health, and I cannot stiffen, which I believe is just stun enemies until I clear one map or clear one stage. Sometimes they have good passives, sometimes they have bad passives, but they're always temporary. And sometimes they don't heal that much, sometimes they heal less or more than 40%, it just depends. So we're going to take this skull. We don't really need the heal. We don't really have a build. We don't know if we want to go physical or magic yet. But Frost Skull, from what I understand, can be good if he's upgraded. Carly Insignia is not good for us because we're not really running any Carlian items, I don't think. We don't really care too much about the passives that we're running. Sprint is okay, Chase is okay, but they don't do a whole lot of damage for us. So we're going to go ahead and actually, I think we're just going to skip for now. We don't have a whole lot of gold, so we might as well save it. Red doors are always a boss, so in this case, it's a mini boss, one of these heroes. A lot of bosses have iframes at the start, so don't rest your hard-earned skills. And like I said, a lot of this is just going to be learning patterns. Ninja, I think, of the bosses that can appear here on stage 1 is probably the hardest. He doesn't give you a whole lot of time to hit him or lock him down, which is really annoying. And then he does a power-up move where he just channels 4 different, mudras or jutsus or whatever you want to call them. But they aren't interruptible. Other bosses, they'll charge up and you can hit them during that time. You can hit him, but he's not going to stop and let you do it. But as you can see, you can hit a few times, but otherwise we did alright. Take some health here. And then after a boss fight, for a mini boss, you get 3 options. So living armor is a unique. So skulls can be common, rare, unique, or legendary, and you can upgrade them all to legendary. So if it starts at unique, living armor starts at unique here. There's no lower version. There's no common living armor. There's no rare living armor, but there is a legendary version if we want to pay for it. And notice that if I destroy this, I get 23 fragments because it's a unique. So 23 from a unique, 11 from a rare, and then a common will give you, I believe, 5. So if we take this, we'll be able to upgrade our Ice Skull, which I think is a good start. This is called a quintessence. So it's always a skull, a quintessence, or an item piece. A quintessence is an item that you can use. It's just basically an additional spell you add. And this will increase our magic attack, which is really good. But we do want to be able to upgrade the Ice Skull at the next vendor, which we're about to meet. So we're going to go ahead and... we don't have to pick it up, we just accidentally did. But we'll just go ahead and destroy it outright. This lady here, she's the one who let you upgrade your skulls. So from common to rare, it's 10, and then 30, and then 100 to legendary. So we have 30 here, which is enough to take our rare up to a unique. Alright, so you get a new name. This is the Ancient Frost Skull. New passives. I got a new ability. Anytime you go from rare to unique, if you don't have a second ability, you gain one. In this case, we got Iceberg, and then some new passives. So we're always chilling things around us. We have a chance to freeze enemies, and then we got Iceberg, which is a cool new ability. And we can swap the buttons that they belong on here, but I don't even need to. So Iceberg freezes things, and we're just constantly freezing things just with our passive. So you can see how that might be useful. We're going to keep pushing skulls because we want to upgrade our stuff. Thief is still really good. Thief, there's no reason to stop using Thief. And one bad hit there. One really bad habit I have is not swapping often enough. So we're going to take this shrine. I believe it's going to give us a health shield, which is always useful. Yep, HP barrier, health shield, whatever you want to call it. Basically just need to take less attack, or less damage over time until it expires or until you run out. So those barrels do explode, but they are not a hazard to us. They don't do damage to us, but do a lot of damage to enemies. And there's quite a few things that you can't kill that do damage to these tentacles. For instance, those fire flowers are just traps, essentially. You can also look at the bone pile and see what level of skull it's going to be. I believe it's going to be a rare. Nope, it's a common. So sometimes you'll get a higher rarity from a seemingly lesser pile, but not so much. Alright, we see a glow beneath these guys' feet, so we know that they have a buff, which in this case is probably attack speed, from the shrine here, so we're going to take it away from them by killing the shrine, and then we're going to go ahead and kill them with the buff that we just gained. So you can see Frost Skull, very helpful to be able to immobilize things and make sure they don't attack you, obviously, against certain things. It's not as useful, but most bosses can be affected by status effects like that. Get us some more gold. Purple door will take us to a vendor. You'll learn the rhythm of the levels as you go. So one thing you want to think about around this stage, if you don't need the health, is finding a quintessence you like, or at least getting a quintessence. It's just free damage later on. So increase physical and magic attack, which we're doing a little bit of both with his autos and his spells. And then overheat, basically you explode right in front of you. So none of these are going to give us a lot of damage. If we were running a physical build, this would be good. And then this is the skeleton sword. It's it's common. It's not really helpful to us right now. So we'll go ahead and take the quint. It's relatively cheap, and it gives us a little bit of extra damage. There's that there. That's the quint. It knocks us back, but it does a lot of damage when it does. And you can see the 2 doors right here. This is our exit of the level once we get there, but we do have to kill all the enemies before we can exit. You can't leave an area early. Go ahead and take this shrine. And that's it. That's all there is. Alright, so this is a golden chest, so not the highest level, but I think second highest, so probably a good item. And Thief's Black Steel Dagger is great. Basically, each time you attack, you get more crit, which I believe spells benefit from crit just the same, so even if we're using a magic build, which we currently are, we're going to be able to benefit from that item. This is a healing shrine. We don't really need to break it yet because we are going to kill them faster than they can heal, and we don't need to heal ourselves. But it's just going to get broken in combat, it seems. And then, like I said, we should be swapping more often to make sure that we get the swap bonus, especially swapping to our ice armor. We're going to get a lot of damage that way. And then just a hazard, just do damage to get rid of them. And then, see, swap, big freeze, kills everything around us. It's very useful. So Skeleton Bomber, an interesting one, but not my favorite. The only one that works like this, basically, when you swap to Skeleton Bomber, you become the Skeleton Bomber. He has different abilities, but he always explodes eventually, and then you automatically swap to your other skull, which can be good. It does a lot of damage when he explodes. There's just not a whole lot of time to wait for an attack to happen. It's better to just have a skull that will attack. So this is our little prelude to the first boss here. So spoilers, if you don't want to see what the first boss is, you're about to. I'm not talking about the story. There is a story. It is a Korean developer, so it is in Korean as far as the voiceover, but obviously the text is in English. Took a bad hit there because I played poorly. So you can see the artwork is just phenomenal for this game, which is not surprising. It's been out for a while, but it just looks great. So second phase, he's going to have some iframes here. He's going to heal, and then we're going to spend some gold to do a little damage. You can see that hits twice now instead of once, and we're going to transform. Now, the good thing about the Frost Skull is that he's a balance as well, so even though he's not as fast as the Speed Skull, he still has that double dash, which against this boss is just phenomenal. Just like any game, it's about learning patterns. It's a little annoying in a roguelite because you obviously can't retry the boss immediately if you fail, so if you struggle with games like this, which, you know, this game isn't the hardest roguelite, but it's definitely not the easiest. If you struggle with a boss like this, it might be a while till you see him again. And then they always drop a chest, which always has an item and a healing orb. So that's a big purple orb, gives us lots of health, and then Priest-Staff slowly restores HP when current HP is at 30% or less. I think that might be the first time I've seen it, and that's saying something considering I've played this game for quite a bit. And it's one of the few items I've seen that actually heals you passively. So we only have 24 skulls, or skull fragments rather, so we're not going to be able to upgrade Icy Boy here, but we can upgrade the Thief, but we're not gonna, because we're relying mostly on the frost damage to do our bidding here. See how this guy's glowing yellow? That means it can't be interrupted during that cast. Very helpful information. It's just not on every enemy that it pertains to. Sometimes an enemy cannot be interrupted, but will not glow yellow like that. You know, you'll learn over time, but it'd be nice if the game communicated it to you. That being said, tiny gripe compared to how great it is otherwise. So even if we're missing with that iceberg, which we are, because I'm playing poorly, it still explodes, which does damage. So good spell, even if we miss. And then some tiles like this, it's a little bit harder to tell where enemies are, so it's nice that the mini-map down there will show us a very simplified layout of where enemies are and where we can go to fight them. Oh, still, there we go. This caster was nice enough to teleport up to us. Gold spawns, and then we're going to keep chugging skulls until we get as much fragments as we need, which might be a while because if we finish upgrading this boy and we haven't got another legendary, we'll probably move to upgrading the Thief, which I don't think I've seen a legendary of. It's
Just not a whole lot enemies can do to us once they're frozen, which is lovely. Breaking these items don't do anything. It's more flavor, it looks like. Oh, well. But, you know, adds to the world. And the fact that pixel art that has physics that, you know, bounces around. Alright, so our friend on the cross here, this will always be a legendary skull. I've never seen anything else appear out of these that isn't legendary. It's the highest level of skull shrine. So we'll see what we get. Alright, this is Reaper. So you're going to see one of the strongest, if not the strongest skull in the game, right out of the box. So good thing about legendary skulls, they destroy everything. Bad thing about legendary skulls, they can't be upgraded. Once you see, what you see is what you get. There's no lower level of Reaper. You just get Reaper, and he's awesome. So he has a ton of each. So rewind. Every skull has a possibility of multiple abilities, but they only have 2. They pull from a pool of like 3 or 4, maybe 5 abilities, but when you pick up the skull, it'll only have 2. There's an ability to re-roll those abilities later, but you don't choose them, it's just random, so, you know, just keep that in mind. Sentence is fine, it's movement, which is great, and then Hellfire is also great. They're both good. There is another ability I like on him, but so far these are good. So even if you're seeing skulls and you're getting spoiled on what the skulls are now, you haven't seen all their abilities. You won't see all their abilities for a long time. I'm still finding new abilities, and I definitely have not upgraded all the skulls that I would like to. So this game, even after beating it, will have replayability for you. And as you can see, he just destroys everything. I'm getting hit because I'm playing poorly, but even then he's kind of carrying me. So we have quite a bit of gold. Now we can be a little pickier about what we want. It looks like we are running a magic build with the 2 of these, so we're not going to look at physical damage here. Notice that a lot of these have a passive as well as an active. So for instance, this is inflicts physical damage when you jump on them. Not going to happen a lot, but if you are using a physical, it also increases your physical attack by 20%, which is huge. Same thing here, when defeating an enemy, there's a chance they'll explode. Also gives us health, which is helpful. And then always want to be paying attention to those passives at the bottom to make sure that you're stacking up whatever passive you want, which right now, the only one we're really interested in, actually none of them are really that great. We're not normal attacking a lot for piercing waves, so helps, but nothing great. So we're going to go ahead and take this. It's just a little more health, and if an enemy explodes when it dies, all the better. Those are the purple orbs that are spawned by things dying when you're playing as Reaper. They pretty much chain off of each other, so if they go hit something and it dies, then that'll chain into more attacks, which is why all this stuff appears dead, even though we haven't touched it yet. And nothing great, but we're going to go ahead and destroy this. If you want to pause the video and look at their abilities, you can, but you know, in further episodes, we'll see a lot more of these skulls and their abilities, but I highly recommend, at least for a little bit, buying the game yourself, playing it, and discovering the skulls is so much of the fun. Alright, so here's a good example. Trap damage decrease, not huge for us right now, though it might be later, but the increased magic damage by 35% is great, and Mana Tech is a great passive. Basically drops these little machine parts that you can pick up to reduce your cooldowns, which is awesome. And then Quintessence cooldown speed from Ruin, also good. Alright, so now we have 2 of these heroes instead of the one we saw on the first stage. Ignore their iframes, and do a little bit of damage here. We really lucked out with these 2 because they like to stand still, which is very helpful. And we don't want to forget about our friend Frosty here. He's just so good at keeping things locked down. You see her powering up there. That is huge for us because if we can hit her for enough damage while she's powering up, it'll actually kind of break her. She'll kind of fall down and we can do a lot more damage. So as you can see, we're not struggling at all with these. Any damage we take is pure laziness, nothing more. And it's not to be understated how much damage Reaper will do with his swap in. Werewolf, only 5. Physical attack we don't really care about. When swapping inflicts stun on an enemy,
can be good, and I don't think 5 skulls is really going to do a whole lot for us. We'll go ahead and take the Magic Bead of Darkness, which also gives us Mutant, which increases cooldown speed of swapping, which can be good later if we are swapping more often. So we don't have anything for her. We're looking for 100 skulls to upgrade our Frost Boys, so we're not going to do a whole lot there. I'm going to misname every skull in the game, so this is the Frost Skull, which is close to what I said, but some later ones, just get ready for it. So we're going to break this, gives us attack speed early. We're not attacking a whole lot with our basic attack. So that Hellfire that he spawns under every enemy around you, so it's huge on enemies that either stand still or if there's just a bunch of enemies and they can't avoid the fire. Genie will give us 11, that's good. One step closer to not just our next upgrade for Frost, but also one step closer to the edge. I don't think gold piles scale. I've never seen it look any different than that one does. Alright. Not great. We're not dashing attack a lot. Crit damage can be good if we're critting enough. And then dash distance. There are dash builds, you know, attacks that happen as you dash, like our arrow, but we're not really dashing that much. Warrior is okay, but he's physical. We're not looking for that. And Weapon Master is very good, especially for the passive physical attack, but once again, we are using a magic build. We have enough gold. Let's go ahead and restock. See what we got here. So critical attacks increase magic attack. That's great. Physical attack not so much. Health not so much. So we're going to go ahead and take this. That gets us 2 of tactics, which is also nice. And then Mirage level 2, or level 1, which is also fun. Basically once a minute you just don't take damage from a time where you should. Let's see what happens here. These healers up here just need to go. Casters are annoying. This game loves to put the casters in an area that's hard to reach, so they just pelt you while... This is just poor play. Pelt you while you're getting killed by their melee friends down below, but... Does he not? Reaper does not trigger traps because he doesn't have feet. That makes more sense than I'd like to admit. So my bad for not noticing. I have really bad luck with Reaper. Basically anytime I get him, I'm like, alright, time to win, and then I lose. Through my own poor play. One tricky thing with his orbs is you want to make sure there are enemies on the screen whenever you spawn them, otherwise they don't always go and find someone new. And one way that the game combats the on-death effect is it doesn't spawn enemies until you move to a certain part of the level, so there will be enemies later, but not until you quote-unquote spawn them yourself. This fire spawned very far. Okay. So we might have set off a chain reaction that literally wins us this stage, which is fine. Apparently they heard me talking shit, because now I'm getting destroyed. Nope, there we go. Don't forget to use Reaper Swap In. It's just too good. Okay, we're moving on. Alright, so this will be a unique. This is the stage below the skeleton on the cross. So. Yep, Ninja is great, but he is physical. Maybe we'll show him off a little bit later. In a future episode, maybe. Now we are getting carried by Reaper a little bit here, but this is a boss where you just need to learn their patterns. There's just really no way around it. Probably lost to this boss 2 or 3 times before I ever defeated it, and even still I lose to it from time to time. Trickier for Reaper because they aren't going to stand still like a lot of bosses, or a lot of enemies will, which is annoying. I think they can be froze, but maybe on a lower chance. And then I'm just dashing into enemies. Or into attacks that I know I can dodge. So when they're both jumping around like this, I tend to just try not to bother attacking. Get a hit here or there, but really there's just not a whole lot to be done. when you see one take a seat next to the big dude up there, then you know that it's going to go down to 1. So sometimes the other sister will come out and they'll alternate. This time we weren't so lucky. So now she's going to get angry and she's going to heal. If she was a little bit lower, she would not heal to full. She would retain a little bit of that damage, but she was not nearly low enough for that to be the case. She is a little bit harder to dodge than her sister was, or how she would be without the dark empowerment, but once again, if you know the patterns, which you would think I don't, by the way I'm playing. Alright, so we would have died there, but we do have a passive that brings us back to life once per run. So I don't deserve to be alive, but I am. It's just the way the world works. And if you're kind of seeing the weakness of our build, we're great against little enemies that take a lot of damage, but not a whole lot of success here with something that has a lot of health. Most skulls do have iframes on their swap, so it's worth swapping just to do some damage and avoid attacks. Like here, swap to Reaper, not to do damage, but to avoid an attack. I just dash through those lightning bolts that you can find a gap if you weren't paying attention. Sometimes she'll do 2 of those dives, sometimes she'll do 3, so it's worth just jumping like she's going to do 3. There was 2. I don't know if Frost Skull being shorter helps in that moment, but I'm going to assume that it does. And then he runs away, because, you know, why not? Big heal. Dash damage isn't great, and since this is going to make us swap an item out, we're going to go ahead and destroy it. We don't have a ton of gold yet at the moment. We're still short quite a few skull fragments for upgrading the Frost Skull, so this might not be a run where we see that happen. And there she is. She always shows up after a boss fight, so unfortunately we'll have to see her after the next boss if we survive, which right now is not looking too likely. So a lot of these scene transitions, these level transitions will also come with a story beat, cutscene, some voice lines, but we've seen them all, and I'm not going to go through them because I want you to experience them yourself if you care about that stuff. And if you don't, well, just watch me. So he will give me gold in exchange for an item of questionable rarity, which in this case is fine. We don't really do much with projectiles at a close range, or at a short range, long range. But we don't really care about attack speed and movement speed. Sprint and soar isn't great, so we're going to go do this and destroy that. Take our skull fragments from the genie here. Poor guy's been broken down quite a few times. We're going to quickly get this shrine so we can get that health shield, since we are dedicated to getting hit this run. One thing about this level is the enemies explode. You just kind of learn over time which enemies explode. Typically they're glowing purple. So, you know, don't get hit by that. Dashes do have iframes. Oh, just talked about getting hit by explosions. So it is worth dashing into an attack you don't think you can avoid. Even more so than jumping. A dash is going to be faster, more reliable, though harder to time. Let's let these guys summon their friend. This is what happens if you don't kill them before they summon him, but he's going to kill by these lasers because, you know, it's just what he deserves, I guess. Yeah, the good thing about hazards in this game is they do affect enemies. Enemies will fall into them and make mistakes like that quite often, which is both amusing and helpful. So this will be a unique Living armor is good. He does magic damage, but we're on the ice boy train at the moment, which does give us enough skull fragments, and we have quite a bit of health, so it's very likely we can make it to the boss, and more importantly, clear it. So legendary Quint here, increase our max HP, which we don't love, but the soul release just does tons of damage, so we're gonna go ahead and take it. Destroying Quints does not give gold, which is unfortunate, though not at all surprising. We don't really need the HP, probably, but magic attack for the time would be nice. If there was anything I was willing to give up, Swamp is just really good for chaining damage between enemies, so we're gonna hang on to our items and just hope that we don't end up needing that heal. So there goes our chain reaction doing work for us. This little tree up here is kind of a play on the trees from level 1 that they do have different attacks and do explode. So Reaper's basic attack does do magic damage, it seems, so we do want to use it. And then this is our legendary, which is basically a big, huge version of Reaper's passive, which looks cool when it comes out, but not very impressive to watch do damage because it's doing it all off screen. It's killing everything for us already, which I guess is impressive. So you'll find some skulls later that are really strong, but they do require you to stay in one place, like Reaper does when he does his Spirit Fire, which I think just kind of works against them in a lot of ways. Some that would be great otherwise, you just can't afford to use them later on. So here's our next boss, which, surprise, now it's 3 heroes instead of 2. How could we not see this coming? So if you can get them locked in the corner here, good news, you do a lot of damage. Bad news, you can't really tell what the hell's going on. We're gonna try. Oh, and pop our quintessence. Haven't had one worth using in a while, so see, it just absolutely destroyed him, and we're gonna get a big heal off of that. So it's just absolutely worth getting a great quintessence. They're not all created equal. Some legendary ones do a lot more damage than others, but this one seems like it's going to be in the higher tier of quints that do a lot of damage. That's what we're looking for. So, as with most games, focus the healer here, which I've been doing a poor job of. Luckily, both of these enemies like to stay planted, so they do quite a bit of damage. We would normally die there, but we do have a healing orb, and we're not going to waste the Quint because we've got this done. The prisoner is unique. He cannot be upgraded to legendary, as my good friend Groggy Gecko, aka Nick, has told us. So we're going to go ahead and avoid it at all costs, and we don't need the skull fragments because we will have 2 legendaries. So we'll see what this does. Nothing great. We'll see what this does. All right. So spirits are a little weird. They do a lot of damage on their own, but more importantly, they give a passive called Fairy Tale, which we'll talk about in just a moment. Gridstone has been helpful to us. We haven't been loving Magic Beat of Darkness, though Mutant is good. What is this? Okay, so 2 things. One, the Water Spirit just does a lot of damage by itself, and it does magic damage, which means it scales with all of our items. But it gives you a passive called Fairy Tale, 1 out of 5. Basically, a sealed spirit stone will follow you, and it will do damage more often the more spirits you have. And if you have all 5 spirits, you summon Spirit King Oberon. I don't know who Spirit King Oberon is. I don't know what he does. I don't know if he's a new skull. I don't know if he's a fairy that follows you and does a shit ton of damage. But I do know that this black spirit stone that follows you from the Fairy Tale passive does so much damage. It's just so worth having. Alright, our first look at the legendary Frost Skull. Did have this sort of spoiled for me by a friend, willingly. I wanted to know. But his AoE passive is constant in that the edges of your screen will freeze over time and then just pop and do damage, which is phenomenal. So, continuously do damage to people near you every 30 seconds, just freeze the screen and destroy everybody, which is fantastic. Now, one thing we are missing with this boy is his immunity ability, which is something that could be very helpful later. But we're gonna go ahead and just do without for now, because we don't have a choice. So, Frostboy is legendary, which means he's closer to on par with Reaper, but Reaper, just by virtue of, you know, how good he is still probably worth using the majority of the time. Some Reaper abilities that you get later on do a little more iframe damage, but or help with a little more iframes. Alright, Infinite Bone. Great thing. Just always want it. Basically every time you use an ability, it has a 30% chance to reset itself, which is what we're going to do here. We're going to lose Swamp, which hurts, but Swamp does a lot less later on, so we're going to go ahead and destroy it. Break this for the buff. Most importantly, take it away from the enemies. Summon some fire under them. Just watch them burn to death. And then the passive from Reaper just do the rest of the work. So yes, we could have used fire twice in a row there, but I didn't realize it reset. Biggest problem with Infinite Bone, is that you won't always notice that your ability reset. You kind of get in a rhythm, and this item just messes with your rhythm. So we don't need bones. Keep it moving. Keep it moving. I'm going to use the Frostboy for a second here. See how much damage that screen freeze does. Enough to kill basically everything we see. Can't really beat it. And we'll just pop this for safety. We are a little low on health. We will get another shot before the next boss, but the next boss can be a bit of a pain. So we're going to go ahead and do our best to minimize damage until then. When you get a lot of enemies on screen like that, the fire is just unstoppable. Alright, so we basically cannot afford to not heal, and Spiritual Coffin gives magic damage, which is great. We're not we're not auto-attacking very often, rather. Once again, not auto-attacking, we're not using speed skulls, and this is defensively great, but we just aren't going to take it. And we won't even look at the quintessence because ours is amazing. So let's restock, see if we get anything good. All projectiles explode on contact. We're not really using a whole lot of projectile attacks. Let's do this one more time. And of course, we've now rerolled it to where we can't afford anything. Luckily, we did not reroll to anything too fantastic. So it might seem cowardly, but we're going to try and engage things without engaging them as much as possible. It's really the easiest way to extend our lives here. I'm going to jump up here and try to set some fire. Nope, nothing up there. So, knowing what I know from previous runs, I'm going to jump down here and enemies are going to spawn, so we just need to be careful. And then go ahead and use Quintessence to stay as safe as possible. Good enough. Don't want to use our dash attack there twice, because the traps do damage, which, you know, we're taking 75% less trap damage. Alright, so this is who we're looking for. This man will let us re-roll our abilities at the cost of gold. I don't know if we can afford it. We can, very much so. And he's going to give us this dash move, which is great, but most importantly, this move, which makes us immune, which is all the more important, especially when it resets like that. We also are going to re-roll Reaper if we can afford it, because he's got some pretty cool abilities, and let's see more of them. Okay, so this is going to be a good time. Death by Fire, we've already seen, but Harvest, well, you'll just need to see it. Let's get some more enemies on the screen here, and just do this, and what it says on the can, it just harvests. More importantly, it can reset with our Infinite Bone, which it just did. So, get up here, just do it, and do it, and do it again. Back down here. Thought we were done. Not. It's okay. Okay. I did not know that did that. I should have known that did that. We are not a physical build. This is no good to us. We don't need more skull fragments. I don't think. As far as I know, they don't do anything for us. Yeah, so that is much better than I gave it credit for. You can cancel his ice block by jumping, but why would you? just not taking damage during that time, and they are. So you're really just biding your time for your big screen freeze. So right now we have so much in iframes. We have the swap to Reaper, which just makes him invincible. We have his Harvest. We have Frozen Boy's Ice Block. We've just got so many ways to not take damage. That being said, I'm going to go to this boss and die to it. Not because of anything wrong with the game, but purely because I play extremely recklessly on this boss, and I pay for it with my life, generally. So Harvest did nothing there. I don't know why. Let's try it again. Okay, it's not doing a whole lot for us. Let's see how this does. And then we're going to go ahead and freeze ourselves, try not to take any damage here. Make the floor a little bit cold, and we're going to go invincible again. We're just going to keep trying to use iframes to scum the game a little bit. So unfortunately, it does not seem like fire from Reaper is doing a whole lot. We're going to keep using it because we can. We'll harvest because we can, but we should have waited for those enemies to spawn. Go ahead and be as icy as possible here. Here's hoping that... Oh, don't stay in that. Here's hoping that that screen freeze just does all the damage for us. Okay. Alright, let's see if we can get our Quint to carry us a little bit. Oh, bad timing. So that ability there just does constant damage, which I think is probably my biggest weakness on this fight, is just taking constant damage, because I don't realize I'm standing in something, even though, you know, the game gives every possibility to let you know, like, hey, you shouldn't be doing that. From the controller vibrating to the sound, to the numbers popping up, you know. It tells you you should not be standing there, you should not be doing that. But I just get excited. Alright, that actually went not so bad. I did take a large portion of my health and damage, but we were carried by the invincibility frames of our skulls, which, you know, is what we were hoping for. Successful quintessence attacks increase magic by 100%. Now here's the question, is does that affect each orb? When each orb hits, do I get the buff refreshed? Kind of doesn't matter, it's still great. And more importantly, static is a great passive. This is what happens later in the game, though, is what do you get rid of? What can you afford to not have? Which I think might be Hunter's Boots for now. Alright, sorry lady, I have no fragments and you can do nothing for me anyway, so keep moving. Alright, so this is the most late game stage that I've seen. I've seen the final boss of the stage, though I have not beaten it, so this isn't new to me, but it's about as close to new as you can get at the moment. And I wouldn't really trade our skulls for anything else. I know most of the legendary skulls that you can get, and I don't really want them, so I'm going to go ahead and just stick with what we got. Alright, so Harvest isn't doing nearly as much damage as I would like. I feel like earlier in the game it was much better on other runs that I've had, but this one is just ain't happening. So let's go ahead and use it, but not rely on it too much. Mostly use it for... I would say it's iframes, but I think it freezes time, so we're not really getting iframes, so to speak. We'll use this. So, as far as I can tell, we get the buff whenever we attack with it, but then it's done. So, we're going to take 10 damage here just for no good reason. Alright, so we get debuffs throughout this level that we can cleanse with this, and they're pretty nasty. They're like, take double damage. Alright, if we die to anything on this run, it's because I deserve it, so just keep jumping off the edge. We're going to keep breaking these down. Alright, Harvest when it crits does not suck. But against small enemies like this, it should do a lot of work. And we should really be trying to use that stuff after the user quit, so it gets double damage. Not really double. I don't think that's how the math works out, unfortunately. Oh, who could have known these things come alive? Oh, it looks super spooky. Alright, unique? Unique. Samurai's good. We're not using physical, and it's a skull for a later date. There just are not enough enemies. Oh, we do not want to get hit by these. Oh, 2 damage from the fireballs, which sucks, but there's that yellow glow telling us that that is not blockable. Or not interruptible, rather. Okay, something tells me... Yep, there we go. So I jumped when I dashed there, which meant that I didn't cover the floor as much as it should have. All those orbs couldn't come after this guy, I guess. We're just being lazy. Alright, it's a good passive. We're not doing a whole lot of damage from behind. We'll go up here. So, Suo Nisio is probably the strongest that I've seen. Archdemon is great, but I would prefer the cooldown on Suo Nisio combined with all of our other cooldown. And we can buy him instead of over here. So, does that win us the run? No, but it does help. I still am forgetting that we don't have the dash on left trigger. That's okay. Kind of getting too good to use syndrome with Suo Nisio here because I can use it right now to just delete everything on the screen, but these enemies, they're just not worthy, really. He's ringing the bell. Must be Suo Nisio time. There he is. There's our boy. I don't know if Suo Nisio is, 1, the way you say it, but 2, a Korean name, an Italian name, just a name they made up. I thought it was a different name, but it's not as it's spelled. That seems right. I don't actually know what that bell ringing is. Calling help, maybe? Thought we could jump that. That was clearly incorrect. So maybe the Frost Skull is the way to go here. Don't want to disparage Reaper. He is doing a bunch of damage, but it's just so much safer to play as Frosty. Frosty the Frosty. Yeah, these guys just aren't going to do anything. They just have to stand there in the ice and wait till they die. Which is not fair, but neither is summoning light Cthulhu tentacles. So. Alright, ring the bell. That means Suo Nisio needs to come in and do everything for me, right? Alright, this is the Harpy Knight. Harpy Knight gives us a shit ton of fragments, which would normally be nice. Thank you, Harpy Knight, but I don't think we're going to use them for anything. Sometimes I would
probably like switch gears later on. Like if I have 2 legendaries, maybe think about what other legendaries I would like to have instead. But I don't think we can afford to have anything but the Frost Skull. Maybe switch out Reaper, but I don't even know what I would change into. Frost Skull's not doing the most damage, but it's keeping us safe. Get rid of that debuff there. Don't care about that. If it doesn't give us magic damage of a sort, then we just cannot be bothered. Alright, I've never seen this boss. I've seen her earlier forms. Oh, they give us platforms now. That is so kind. So she doesn't stay on the ground, which makes it very rough to do anything. So we're used to an ECO and hope for the best. Luckily she does not need to be on the ground for any of Reaper's attacks. Probably. Okay, maybe for fire. We're gonna land. It does seem to cannibalize itself, unfortunately. Okay. There's probably something I'm supposed to do there. I don't know what it is. The thing about Reaper's basic is that it hits pretty much everywhere. So Inicio, do your thing. Frozen here. Maybe that's the play here, is we just stay immune to damage as Frosty. When possible. See the water spirit shooting out there, so we're just gonna... Okay, we found a spot. Not bad. So she can be hit in the air by the dash, it just doesn't really stand this stuff. I don't feel like I'm an unworthy skeleton. You love to see it? Nope, you don't love to see that. She can be frozen, which isn't all that surprising, but it is still great. So we're trying to do as much damage as we can here without engaging ourselves. And it worked out. She didn't give a whole lot of health, which sucks, but you know, it is what it is. Alright, Ifrit, just not as good as Inicio. Dash cooldown. There's nothing good here, so we just break this down for gold, because gold's the only currency we might use. This is going to be a longer video than I was expecting, mostly because we're just doing so well. Suffering from success, as it were. I can't get DMCA for that, right? That's not how that works. I don't know what any... Oh, I do know what this is. This is... kill everything until the gate comes down and he becomes vulnerable. Do a little bit of this. Yeah. So he's still invulnerable, but the gate is down, so we're just gonna raise some fire, which doesn't do anything because the statue thing doesn't count as an enemy apparently. Break the statue to break his shield, which is taking forever. And now he's vulnerable. Just like that. This guy shouldn't be that difficult. He projects a lot of his attacks. Nope. Dumb damage. You know shit's getting real when Inicio doesn't kill anybody. Or when he does kill some things, but not everything. Take us to the shop where we will buy... Okay. So, if I had to guess... Someone can pause the frame and check. That was the food that makes it so it gives us 1 health, but we can't take more than 1 health per hit.
in the next like level, maybe next 2 levels. I'm kind of interested to see what the rocker does, but I'm too afraid to try and go in without 2 legendaries on the next boss, because the few times I fought that boss, it's not gone well. And none of these increase our magic damage, so we don't really care, right? We roll, and we can't afford anything here if we wanted to. Which, luckily, we don't really care to. We could break down an item to pick something up, but nothing there is worthy of it. Alright, so there's a lot of things happening here. I'm not going to pretend to know what all of them are, but I think we're doing okay. Seems like staying off the ground is just the best policy. General, yeah, so we're only taking 1 damage per hit, which is wonderful because we're playing really bad. But that will only last for a floor. Could have gone worse, but the next few floors are not going to be so forgiving. Literally, they will do a lot more damage than that. We're not auto-attacking enough to make the attack speed worth it. Just need to kill the statue as quickly as possible. I think the statues die based on number of hits they've taken, not damage, so it makes it difficult for us when we don't attack very quickly. We're currently taking a lot more than 1 damage per hit, so... Maybe if we positioned him over the statues, the fire would spawn on him, would be okay there, but we're really just wasting abilities at this point. There we go. Try to hit everybody. This guy will give us a skull for health, which we will not do. Alright, we let him hit us about 17 times more than we should. So we're going to go ahead and just pretend like that never happened. That can be good, but I think we just rely on damage and hope for the best. Took more than half our health just from those few attacks. We really just need to ice block 90% of the time, and the other 10% just lay down the groundwork for doing damage over time. 2-for-1 deal here with the statue. And there it goes. I think Sonicio even did his damage to them as well. Nope. Nope, they just take a lot of damage. They're weak. I don't think skill cooldown is our problem right now, but maybe there's something better we can get rid of. Like this priest staff isn't really doing a whole lot for us, maybe. It does restore HP when we're low, and we have been low. Yeah, this probably isn't doing anything for us. Alright, so here we are. This gives us a chance to cleanse our debuff, which is nice. I kind of them before they absolutely destroy me. About an hour in. That seems about right for a run of this success, as I'd call it. Think of how much of this run I wouldn't get done if I didn't have the revive, though. You see why roguelites work the way they do, letting you become stronger over time, so you can beat things that you normally wouldn't, or I normally wouldn't. I mean, sure, there's people out there that will go out and be like, alright, I beat the game without ever using whatever, but that ain't me. So, breaking these statues to break the shield, it's kind of sticking with this area. We're really just going to try and sit and ice block as much as possible. Switch to Reaper when we want to get some damage in, or we're waiting on cooldowns. So you see how they carry us, it seems. Just great timing. Slippery like a rat. Is that a thing? A rat slippery? I can't say I know. I've interacted with rats on a few occasions. They were very kind and respectful, but slippery, not so much. Maybe I'm thinking about too literally. She means slippery like getting away easily, and I'm thinking slippery like you're covered in slime, which they're not. There was a better place to do what I was doing. That wasn't. I'm just. Nope. Sunisio. And once again, calling on you first. We can just harvest back to back and then ice block whenever we have nothing better to do. I think we'll be alright. Oh. Easiest way to not have to dodge things is using Reaper constant. Falling off the ledge, not the way to do this thing. I see, there was just nothing to hit there, huh? So it seems like she is continuing her attacks as we're in Harvest, which is good. Patience, my least of my virtues. Oh, this is awful. Okay, yeah. It was a good run. We got a lot of dark quartz, which will help us later. It's about an hour long, which is fine. So yeah, that's our first run on cam. It felt good. So we just need to be better. That's the first time I've seen that portion of that fight. I usually die on the statues. And we were definitely carried by Reaper and a few of our upgrades from runs past, but hopefully you kind of get the gist of the game. I highly recommend going out and getting it. I think it's still on sale for its launch sale, which is like $15-16. Absolutely worth it. I would not be surprised if at the end of 2021 you see this on Game of the Year lists across the board, because it's that good. So yeah, we'll see you next time. We'll do more of these, hopefully with more success, but half the fun is learning, so enjoy. And I'm gonna go tend to Nora, who seems to have just woken up.